made some bad judgments about people. When I was young, I I was young, I was inexperienced, hadn't lived long enough to know right from wrong and know much of anything. So I saw the behavior of a few, and I just labeled them without really taking the time to understand who they were, why they behaved differently than me, why they lived differently than me. Looking back now, I know I wasn't the only one who thought this way. I mean, we see something we don't understand, or maybe we don't like, and we just rush to put a label on it. Because labeling it is just easier and faster than actually stopping and taking a step back and kind of objectively looking at the situation. That takes some intellect, that takes some time, that takes some discipline. And when you're a kid, you don't have all of those tools yet. And it's so much easier. Rather than to stop, take a step back, look at yourself. It's so much easier just to take it out on somebody else, you know? Feel your emptiness by being ugly to someone else. Instead of turning your energy and thoughts inward to analyze what's going on in your heart, in your mind, it's easier just to spout some nasty things out about others. When I look back now, I remember my behavior, and it didn't feel like I was spreading hate. When I labeled these folks, it felt like I was just telling it like it was. You know, I did grow up in a household with far too much hate. Mostly my stepfather. He was not a cruel man. He did provide for me. I mean, I had a roof over my head and food on the table, but I was really aware of how he felt about minorities. Even at that age, I had some understanding of his history, and he did have a history of being affiliated with groups that didn't favor minorities and that stood against them. And I knew he had some association with these groups, and I picked it up from the way he talked about the minorities that he worked with, you know, that he would have to go work alongside the monkeys and things like that, you know, comments like that. And although, you know, it was not an unsafe environment for me, it was not the most wholesome environment for a young man to grow up in. At that age, you're very impressionable. You don't really know what things to believe about the world. You really haven't had time or the experience to form your own opinions yet, you know. You probably haven't worked, and I hadn't. I just barely started working. I worked at a auto parts store. But what I was going to say is you probably haven't worked long enough to really work alongside minorities and people that look different from you, and people from different backgrounds and cultures. So you all you know is, you know, what you're told from the people that you trust. And, you know, this guy put food on my plate, so I trusted him. And, you know, he was the reason why my mother and my sister and I had a roof over our head, so I trusted him. He's an adult, and, you know, you think that somebody that does these things probably knows a thing or two that you don't. So when I picked up on his sensibility or his opinions, about these folks that were different than us, I kind of just took it to heart that, must be true. And I adopted them for myself. I adopted the beliefs and ideas for myself. So the deal is in high school, I had to go to school in Houston, and there were a large group of African Americans that attended the school that I went to. And it was hectic. I wasn't used to that kind of environment. And, walking down the hallways, it was loud. There were people jumping up and down, yelling, hollering, carrying on. Same thing in the classrooms, just kind of disruptive, definitely loud, definitely more difficult for me to focus my attention on my studies. And they were a distraction, you know? So it was their behavior and their volume and, the way they interacted with one another. It was not something I was used to. I had transferred from a school in San Antonio, kind of bouncing between my grandparents and my parents. And this was the first taste that I really had of, being in close proximity to somebody that was much different than I. And I didn't like it. It made me uncomfortable. It made learning hard. I had questions. I was like, what is going on here? Where am I? Who are these people? And this is when I so easily adopted my stepfather's opinions of different people. And I made judgments. I made judgments about the behavior of a few, and I labeled the entire race that way. Because it was so much easier for me to do that. Just slap a label on this element of discomfort for me. Just slap a label on it, and that way, in my mind, I'll know, okay, well, they are like this because, they're inferior. They're not as smart. They're not as capable, or just whatever, I was telling myself back then. It was a disservice. Obviously it was a disservice to them, but it was a disservice to me too, because I wasn't taking the time to look at the big picture, to understand the differences, The differences are many, So much is different. Their culture is different. Their living conditions are different. Their economic resources are different. Their background is different. They look at family different. They look at so many aspects of life differently, and that affects their behavior. And I understand that now, but I couldn't pick it apart back then, as a kid. I didn't have that skill yet. I thought that I had some insight into those people, when in fact, what I had was prejudice. Simple as that. I was being prejudiced as a young person, as a naive young person. What I didn't understand back then was that those judgments, my judgments about those other people, they weren't so much about them, they were more about me. You see, I didn't have the same self-worth that I do today, I didn't feel the same way about myself then as I do today. I hadn't gotten to that place, and making judgments about these different folks around me that made me uncomfortable. it made me feel a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, a little bit better, you know? So it made this awkward situation a little bit easier to take, to tolerate. You see, prejudice comes from a place of weakness, not a place of strength. You may look at prejudiced people and they're spouting off such harsh opinions and often very ugly things, you know. You may think that, oh my goodness, they must be a really strong person to say such awful things, such huge things. But no, that's not the case at all. It's coming from insecurity, from weakness, from lack of self-worth. That's where all of this comes from. So, all these years later, all this gray hair later, I don't think that way anymore. Letting go of that way of thinking, the rush to judgment, the urge to label what I don't understand. I've let all of that go, and I live differently. And I've raised my kids to live differently too. I've always wanted them to make their own decisions with regard to everything. I mean, pretty much what they want to do, their education, religion, what do they want to believe in, and who do they want to love and who do they want to hate. I don't know that they hate anybody, thankfully. I mean, who wants to have a heart full of hate? I definitely don't. But I didn't raise them to be prejudiced either. And I try to teach them to take a long, hard look at something or someone or a group of someone's before you to rush to judgment and put a label on them. So self-worth, there's a lot to it. If you think you might be lacking, look at it. You're probably worth a heck of a lot more than you give yourself credit for. We're all here for a reason. We have a purpose. Hey, if any of you feel like this or any of my other talks resonated at all, some of you have reached out to me and asked if there was a way that we could do a private talk. So there's a link at the bottom of this video description. If you're interested in purchasing a private talk with me, that's available. And yes, I mean, it is paid. And that is so that we can guarantee that you will have my undivided attention. And I would, whatever I'm doing, you know, if you pay to have a talk with me, I'm going to set some time aside to make that happen. So again, no pressure. And if you want to just continue to watch my videos and get what you will from them, then please do. This is just here because some of you have asked for it. I'm Mursegeorge. I appreciate your time. And until next time, I'll see you. Mursegeorge out. Bye. often, in how many different avenues do we always just take the easy way out? That's just one I can think of. That's our problem. No, I don't want to preach. Here we go, preaching. uh, I often feel like a lot of our problems today in this modern day and age that we live in have to do with the fact that life has gotten too easy for us. I was talking to a guy at work the other day, and we agreed that things were different back, 100 years, 200 years ago. I mean, you really had to work very hard to make sure you had a roof over your head and it was a safe place for you and your family, and to keep from getting eaten, and where you were going to get your next meal from, and just staying healthy. So all of our resources used to go into staying fed and sheltered and healthy and alive. And now we have all of those things at our disposal for far too easy. And that just gives us the time and energy to take the easy way out with regard to understanding things that are different. So there's my philosophy for the day. Sorry you didn't ask for that. But if you're interested in knowing a little bit more about me and how I think, there you have it.